Welcome everyone, welcome. Welcome to another episode of Son of Elijah. My name is Mac the Lion and I'm your host for this program. I will take you quickly into some dreams, visions and revelations, because the mandate of God concerning the Son of Elijah is to expose the spirit that is trying to contradict the move of God and the church. So I want everyone to pay very close attention to the dreams and visions and revelation that I want to share as a starting point. In 2013, I was in South Africa. I was staying in a hotel in a city called Durban. Durban being one of the major cities of South Africa, which I came to understand much later. It is the foundational spiritual source from which everything that happens in South Africa emanates from. So I came to understand much later, because when God sent me to South Africa, He told me specifically that I must go to Durban. That was very clear, and I went there. Now, I lodged in a hotel in a place called Umhlanga, which was a place that was not far from the waterfront, just at the very core of where Durban is. I was lodged in a hotel just about a few kilometers from the shoreline. And in that vision, as I was there, God showed me something. I saw 5 spirits emerge from the depths of the great waters, and I could see them very clearly. I saw that each of them, they looked like prehistoric beings that had existed even before man was on the earth, normally or popularly called dinosaurs. That's how they looked. They all had a hump with the head and all that. I saw them very clearly. They all kind of looked alike. And as they emerged, I noticed that on top of their head was a crown. Each of them had what looked like a golden crown on each and every one of them. And when I saw that vision, I heard a word from heaven. And that word said to me, he said, "These are the kings that rule over South Africa." When I heard that, because I was taken aback by the vision, because I had not seen anything leading up to that. I had done a lot of work in a couple of nations leading up to that. I had actually embattled a lot of territorial entities, but I had never seen creatures that looked exactly like that. There were 5 of them. They looked like prehistoric beings after the order of dinosaurs, and each of them were kings that ruled over the nation of South Africa. Now, I didn't know what their names were. I didn't know what type of spirits they were at that time, because you can't have those data yet until you take them on. So that was the first thing God showed me. And God now told me that He had called and assigned me and sent me to that city because He wanted me to undertake an assignment in South Africa. But the foundational spirits that rule that nation were all based out of Durban, and that I was now sent there specifically to take on the prince of the power of the air. And that prince, because that word is very loaded. The prince means principalities. The powers means demonic spirits that operate in that territory, because principalities are thrones of installments that cater to all the entities that function within that territory. So they are enthroned creatures, princes of darkness, and they rule over sections of the earth. They rule over territories and lands and places, and everyone who functions or everyone who's to do anything within that territory, they are the one to make sure either those things are done for their advantage or corrupting the land, because they want every entity that functions within that land to be corrupted. Then we now have powers, which are demonic entities that operate within the timeline or within that territory, and these are the ones that actually possess individuals. These are the ones that put pressure on people to sin and do things that are contrary to the word of God. So those are devils or demons. And then last but not the least is because he's now called the prince of the power of the air. The air talks about space. The air talks about entities that function in space or in high places. So those are spiritual wickedness that are operational in high places. Now, these 5 kings were in charge of the foundational entities that dominate and rule the nation of South Africa. Now, when I heard that word from the Lord, I thought it was something that was going to just take a few months, maybe 3 months at most, because I've done major outings in quite a number of nations, and at times most of those missions don't take longer than 90 days. 3 months, I'm done. But now here was I thinking that was the same thing. So I asked the Lord a few questions, but the answers didn't come because the answers were all hidden in the engagement. So when I took on those entities and started battling them, that was when the revelation of who they were, what their mission was, how they controlled the land, the contamination of that which they did, how they did it, everything was now given to me. And now, since I was to overcome them, since I was to dominate them, since I was to trample them, since I was to deal with them, since I was to triumph over them, I was now called to be able to harvest revelation and understanding that will come as a result of overcoming them. So I took on those entities. Now, needless to quickly add that 90 days didn't cut it. It ended up taking me 5 years. Could you believe that? It took me a total of 5 years to be able to take on those entities, neutralize them, overcome them, and come to a place where I was now established in that dominion and now being able to take delivery of the knowledge and the revelation of the consummate content that has now made me today not just the son of Elijah, but carrying that spirit that will be able to dominate and give God's people the consummate revelation that is necessary for them to be able to consummate these ages and bring in the harvest that God has scheduled for the church, even as all things will wrap up at the end. So when all that occurred, I started the mission. Now, I just want to zero in on specific things because this vision is really broad and there are a lot of things I could start bringing up. But I just want to tell you, at the point of overcoming them, step by step, I took on those entities, went to their gates, undertook the intelligence, the destructive intelligence of the dragon, and neutralize them successfully in the capacity I was sent to. And after that, I was able to know each and every spirit that was represented. So I will give you the names and the entities and that which each of those spirits represent. Now, I want to take you through what those spirits were, one after the other, because it dovetails perfectly into that which I'm bringing us to in this particular series, in this particular exposition that I'm doing. The first spirit that I took on, because there were 5 entities and I needed to defeat each and every one of them. So the first one was the spirit of ancestral worship. The spirit of ancestral worship. If you know anything about the people that dwells in the southern hemisphere of Africa, I'm not just talking about South Africa as a nation, but all the nations that are all within that region. There is a stronghold of the spirit of ancestral worship. That means it's a belief system where they believe that their ancestors and their forefathers who died ahead of them are still alive and well, but now they are living spirits who live in another world. And that spiritual world where they live, they are able to look upon them and guide them, provide instructions, provide how they should go about their lives, the things they ought to do, the things they ought not to do, guiding their whole existence, micromanaging them. Now, that spirit is actually a principality and is a belief system that is called the spirit of ancestral worship. So they literally worship their ancestors with a belief system, and without understanding, they are like literally being micromanaged by spirits behind the scene. And those spirits are not the spirit of their forefathers, but they are actually spirits that are operating from the dark world. And it's the enemy that is actually micromanaging them, literally controlling their lives with that belief system. It's called the spirit of the ancestral worship. Now, the second spirit that I took on is the spirit of the witch doctor, popularly called the Sangomas. Now, the Sangomas are, just think of them as voodoo priests who have access to the dark realms and have gifts to be able to see dreams, visions, directions, make incantations, have ideas on things they ought to do, have a high level of knowledge about people on a personal level, directing them on how they should go about their lives, the things they ought to do, and literally micromanage their existence. So the people constantly consult witch doctors, asking asking for directive, asking for things they ought to do. If they have enemies, how do they take them on? If they have individuals who are attacking them, how do they defend themselves? How do they also attack others as when necessary? If there's someone they hate and they want that person dead, all these things are done through the power of the witch doctors. So they do curses, they do hexes, they also remove curses, they negotiate with invisible beings, spiritual beings, are able to reach agreements on specific things. They make covenants on their behalf. All these things are all mitigated, are all regulated by the witch doctors, known as the Sangomas. And this is the spirit of witchcraft on that frequency. And the spirit of witchcraft is the spirit of the Sangomas, which are also called the witch doctors. That's the second spirit I dealt with. And even today, there are a lot of people who go to church, even Christians. It doesn't matter. They still consult the dark powers. They still consult the Sangomas because they were raised this way. And that's why presently there's a high inclination on the prophetic ministry, even in that part of the world, simply because of the inclination to the Sangomas. They are used to consulting. So they prefer individuals who represent God, who they can consult, not people who come and teach them or teach them how to be like God or grow in the things of the spirit. They're not really interested in that. All these are all powered by the spirit of the Sangoma, the witch doctors. Then we move to the third spirit I dealt with, the spirit of Satanism. Now, the spirit of Satanism is not endemic to South Africa. That spirit was brought in by the foreigners, the Caucasians who came in from Europe. Initially, some of them were atheists who didn't believe in God. Then eventually they exposed themselves to some form of spiritism and all kinds of things that are done in the occultic world. Systematically and gradually, they believe strongly there is now a Satan, there is a devil. And by tapping into his power, tapping into his frequency, they are able to micromanage their existence, and they are able to use those powers to be able to gain wealth in this world, and then in the world to come they will reign with Satan because they believe all those lies. And as a result of that, they are Satanists. Now, when I was in Durban, I had to go to the Broadlands in order to undertake and take on those entities, because that's where their foundation is. Places like Balito, places like Zimbabwe, and all these are areas in the Broadlands and its adjacent areas where the real foundation of the Satanists are there. And from there, they are able to project a lot. And that's why presently there are a lot of institutions and schools and all that where the young people have been exposed to Satanism, all coming from that gate, that spirit, that entity that was brought in from Europe originally as a theistic spirit and then morphed into a satanic spirit of satanic worship. And now it's all over South Africa. Even though they are not as noisome as other groups of people, but they are there. If you go into the dark web or any other place, you will see how the things they do and the times they meet and the occultism they do and all the, not just the incantations, but all the seances they do. So they use a lot of dark arts in order for them to accelerate their agenda. And there's a lot of promise of wealth and all that, and blood sacrifices and all that. And all that is quite prevalent in South Africa. That's the spirit of Satanism. Now, the fourth spirit I took on there was the spirit of false religion. That also is not endemic to South Africa. That spirit was brought in by the Indians, or should I say from people of an Asian descent, and primarily the Indians. They brought in the spirit of false religion and all the isms you can think of, and the multiple worship of strange gods and all types of belief systems and all that. All that was brought in from Asia. That is not endemic to the local South African, because the local South African only know two things. Their local ancestral worship and the Sangomas, who were the witch doctors that mediate for them. That's all. But every other thing was brought in. It was foreign. So the Satanism was brought in. The spirit of false religion was brought in from Asia. And now we have a lot of that. They even have their days. They have their times when they do all kinds of rituals. And it's very common, especially in places like Durban. Because in Durban, they are fully represented. The spirit of ancestral worship fully represented. The spirit of Sangoma fully represented. The spirit of Satanism fully represented in Durban. The spirit of false religion That's where the stronghold is, all in Durban. Durban is the one place where there's a time of the year where they celebrate and do all kinds of strange practices, and at times they come out and make a walk and do all kinds of things. All those practices are done with all in Durban. That's why Durban is the spiritual nerve center for South Africa. That's where the holy grail of the all belief systems, that's where it thrives, and that's where it powers every other thing that happens in South Africa. So goes Durban, so goes the rest of South Africa, literally, because that's the spiritual nerve center for South Africa. Then we'll go to the fifth one, the last but not the least, and this one I believe is the most dangerous, is the most powerful, and is an enemy within. And that is the spirit of the false church. The spirit of false church, also known as Mystery Babylon, also known as the spirit that is powered by the entity rightly known as Jezebel, the Jezebelic entity, the institutionalized spirit, also known as Mystery Babylon, the spirit that operates from the depth of the waters. In some circles, they are also called the mummy of the waters. That's the spirit that is literally fielding the false church. This spirit operates in church. This spirit comes to church. This spirit mimics tongues. They pray in their own tongues. They do everything. They give prophecies. They do everything that is fully represented in the church, but it's a false spirit. Very common even amongst the charismatics and the Pentecostals, because they are really able to mimic that whole movement, because that whole movement is driven with a lot of manifestations, whether it's miracles, whether it's healings and all that. And so when that false church come in, they're able to do strange miracles. They're able to mimic false miracles. They're able to, everything they do is all built on the spirit of falsehood. And with that understanding and with that operational foundational methodology, they are able to drive a lie into the church. It's called the spirit of the false church, and that spirit right now is dominating extremely the contamination of what we know as the church now. So you have to pay very close attention to the spirit of the false church, because that's the spirit that is driving the agenda of wickedness. And there's a lot of things happening in the church today that is all false and fake. The spirit of falsehood, the spirit of the false prophet, false prophetesses, false individuals, the spirit of falsehood is driving a lot of things. So when I continue in my next episode, I'm going to start unveiling and exposing that spirit of the false church and showing you the enigma that is operational in the church. And a lot of people are carried away, and especially in the southern hemisphere, without even calling too much names, they are literally dominating the church scene. They are in the radio, they are in the television. There's a lot of manifestation of scenes of things they are doing, and they have literally hijacked the media, and with all their falsehood, they are driving a fake and a false agenda. So I hope you have enjoyed that which we have thought. I hope you have come to receive the dynamics of that which this revelation is presenting. For my name is Mark the Lion, and this is Son of Elijah. I will continue in my next episode. Please kindly do subscribe. Please be a part of what we are doing and share the video and let others watch it, because we're on a high frequency drive to release the expose that God has for us, even for the church and even for the move of the Spirit at this point in time. Thank you for this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.